Alright then, so I've done a couple of videos now basically for conclusions to this game. One being sort of wanting to go over the problems basically have the game, and another basically to go sort of go over each individual stage. But this video is just going to sort of cover something else that's not sort of dumping on this game, but so much what does you suggest for stuff to come, so to speak, for Partia 4 and onward. And I'm just going to jump basically into this game here, and we'll just jump to this chapter here. Alright, so I want to note that there's basically a lot of stuff I basically like about this game. And I like how it's basically come about from the earlier titles, Partia 1 and 2. But going forward, something I want to suggest is that I actually suggest the arena here. So I want to note that basically in this game, I think it'd be a good idea if the arena is basically so you're done away with, or pushed back a lot farther than it was in Partia 3. Playing this game, I really like the fact that early on I didn't really have access to the arena to sort of play with. I actually had to sort of rely on tactics and stuff like that to win, and it very much felt to me what could have been done a lot better for Partia 3 is if the arena was basically not available until farther down the road. I can see the arena being something that could be used to sort of train up your characters to be better if they really need to be trained better at some point. But there's never really any point in the game where it's really necessary, so to speak, that you actually have to train up your guys. And I think it would have been a lot better if the arena was basically pushed back to say 2/3 of the game, or even the twilight of the game, so to speak, and chapters 20 and up basically right there. But beyond that, I like how it basically if I go to say the item shop and the blacksmith, I like the fact that these are now you just buy infinite amounts of them if you want to. You can go to the item shop and buy infinite amounts of spells and stuff like that. It's just the arena basically have the biggest problem with, and that's something just a note right there. I'll note as well for the inn, by the way, I like the idea that there is randomized characters, but as sort of stated in the first video I basically did for this, it'd be a good idea if you actually brought back some the characters that you actually could recruit from the inn, at specific points. I want to note that I think Partia 1 did a really good job basically of having fixed characters to actually recruit. And I actually think that would have been a good idea to actually bring back a little bit in some form, maybe you did in Partia 2, where there was that initial character recruit for the game, and everything else can be randomized after that. For most part though, everything this screen here, the intermission it works just as it should, and I'm quite happy about it. Now, something else to note by the way about this game, by the way, another suggestion I basically have for you is to actually cut back on a character basically sort of introduced in the game. I want to note that basically through this gameplay here, I basically have access to a lot of characters here, and basically just sort of cut down the interaction basically have between with each individual character basically in the gameplay. And I think it would be a good idea of if there's less characters basically to sort of play with. I think beyond what was it? Was Baynard, I guess we had. There was no real real worth for any of the characters being introduced at past that point. Past stakes 6 for example. You don't really get a whole lot of interactions between the different characters and how they sort of play into the game. And I think it would be done a better service to the game if you had less characters for the character interaction purposes. There's also another thing about note as well, by the way, is you have the ability to recruit characters in Partia 3, so you don't really have to worry so much about having the player being underpowered with a lack of characters, because they can just recruit whoever they need to. And I think that would have been a great idea to have the recruitment feature being used a lot more to sort of make up a player's army, as opposed to them filled out with these premium characters and stuff like that. So going forward, I suggest probably maybe cut the character roster you basically receive in half, and then the rest will be just an army of nobody, so to speak. Going on about the characters in the army of Alexis here, something else to note is that I think it'd be a good idea to have a sort of smaller missions as well. I think for the most part, like, you actually did a service in Partia free by having, like, these big, like, pitched battles that, like, that sort of happen. And the one, like, Hill Annihilate is, like, you have, like, 3 guys on your side, and then Hill has, like, 60 guys on, like, his side or something like that. And it's just a huge, like, like, sort of, like, waiting, like, business, basically waiting for, like, the turns to sort of, like, be completed. And it really goes to show, because, like, you actually have that skip button in, like, the combat now, because you really need to be able to like, push your guys along so you can actually, like, finish the turns. It probably would have been a good idea to actually have, like, less guys, so, like, that wasn't as much of an issue. And, like, have, like, sort of, like, smaller stages. Like, have more stages, but, like, just have them smaller and, like, more compact. So, going forward, I'd say, like, have less characters and probably have, like, smaller armies basically going forward. Especially if you're going to try and have, like, a more, like, adventurous, like, sort of setup that you basically, like, want to have, like, going forward, so to speak. Something else to know as well, by the way, is it'd be nice to actually see, like, a little bit more done, basically, of, like, the units basically themselves as well. I know for the most part that, like, in this game, you basically saw me use, like, a lot of, like, dragoons and, like, horsemen to basically do stuff. And it'd be a good idea, like, the infantry had sort of, like, your own, like, perks as well. For example, like, Este here, who's basically a Corsair. It probably would have been a good idea to, like, have, like, a sort of, like, mission, basically, where if you basically play, like, the pirate or the Corsair, that they can actually, like, maybe, like, swim across, like, something that, like, the area space can't reach. I can see, like, for example, like, as an idea for, like, a mission you could possibly play with, have, like a pirate mission where, like, you're up against, like, a bunch of enemy pirates, and they're actually going to ambush you by, like, crossing a stream, so to speak. So, it's not something that basically, you're going to see coming, so to speak, as, like, the leader, so to speak. You get ambushed by, like, a bunch of, like, pirates, like, crossing the river to, like, maybe, like, block off your escape route or something like that. And, there could be other stuff as well. So, there could be, like, say, terrain, like, issues where, like, mounted units can't, like, run through terrain very quickly, or, like, they can't, like, access certain terrain because, like, mounted units, like, can't climb. And stuff like that would be, like, really well done, I think, to, like, look into for, like, the future. So, like, another thing basically to point out here is, like, it'd be a good idea to have this, like, each unit basically has, like, a sort of role that they're really, really good at. So, like, the dragoons are basically just, like almighty and awesome, like, all around, but, maybe they can't, like, maybe, like, for dragoons, by the way, they can't really, like, stand, so to speak, like, being in, like, a dense jungle, because it's, like, too claustrophobic for them. So, like, they can't, like, go into, like, say, the tropic forest, like they did in like, this game here. Or, like, installations, of course, they can't fit in there, so they don't, like, they just don't go inside them. Even if, like, a horseman can fit, which, like, you might have wanted done, like, with, like, Elvira and, like, taking her out. But yeah, that's, like, something else to note, basically, like, about this game. Now, something else to know as well, I think, by the way, it probably would have been a good idea to, like, have its, like, armors, like, more, like, more on display for, like, the enemy units, I think. I think, like, for the most part, like, it's a good idea to have them, like, not have, like, armor basically early on in the enemy, but, it'd be a good idea to actually have, like, some sort of, like, equipment basically to, like, make use of. So I can actually, like, see, like, the enemies basically being, like, sort of fully equipped. It would have been a good idea as well to, like, make them more diverse as well. So, maybe, like, early on, like, Hode and, like, Crows, they're, like, might be equipped with, like, basic axes and stuff like that, but Hode might have, like, some other armor. And the Armor Knights that basically appear in, like, Stage 2, they might have, like, a bit of, like, lower armor as well, to sort of, like, indicate that, like, these guys are just, like, nobodies, with, like, the bare minimum to sort of survive with. I realize that armor basically, like, complicates things for like, new players and stuff like that, but I don't think, like, the basic armor, like, letter here is, like, really gonna do that much. I mean, like, you get, like, 1 defense point from this, so it's not adding that much to it, I don't think. Something else to note, by the way, as well. I very much going forward, I think it'd be a good idea to, like, have it, like, you actually have, like, different effects for, like, different spells in this game. I know, for example, that dark spells basically, like, will cause basically a vampire, like, health from, like, the enemy to, like, heal yourself. But it'd be a good idea if, like, all the other spells you have, like, some sort of purpose going for as well. For example, I could see, like, wind spells being something that, like, do physical damage to the enemies as opposed to, like, doing magic damage. So, maybe, like, you might use a magic, when mage basically use, like, a wind spell on, like, an enemy, perhaps they, like, knock them over, like, a physical gust of wind, and instead of, like, hitting the target's, like, magic defense, they hit their like, their actual defense instead, causing them to like take like physical damage. And that could be like a really good mechanic basically, like different spells they basically do like different things. So we could like knock people over like physical damage, fire damage might just like cause them to take a burn damage like over time. So each like turn they take like a tick of damage. So like they basically take damage like over time like they do like you saw like fire damage like what how it's basically implemented in this game. Maybe like that could be a thing where like you light people on fire and like take fire damage basically over time, sort of like they do with like poison damage, and be like a sort of like nerf status element. I can see like ice being sort of like a negative like modifier type of spell where like you basically lower the target's basically speed and skill so that they like become like less effective. And then like light damage is just like a flat out like super like ray of like light, right? That like does a lot of damage to them. So you just try and kill the target with it, so to speak. It's like it's direct, it's deadly. That's what its purpose is. That's what it does. And then like dark spells like similar to light, but just vampires to heal the life back to you. So it's like a healing spell. I can also see by the way as well that it'd be a good idea to actually like it'd be a good idea to sort of like flesh out the status base as well for healers. I know that like basically in this game you have like the warp staff and the repair staff basically, but it'd be like a nice idea if the healers could actually do like a little bit more and like heal and like support people. For example, I could see like them being able to like buff units as well, so you could turn your healer into like a buffer that like has maybe like a staff that like gives your like units like a blast that like gives them like a temporary boost of stats like the charge space skill basically does. And that's something I basically want to note by the way. I want to basically see like more basically done like the mage side of like things like make it like a little bit more different. So like ice spell and fire spell aren't like just like one wastes a little bit more than the other, so it like takes longer to cast and stuff like that, or inflicts a little bit more damage and stuff like that. Like a little bit more basically make it like stand out, so to speak. I suppose on that note, by the way, it would be nice to actually see like a little bit more differentiation weapons as well. By the way, like I will note that it's nice that you have like the arm slayer and like it's nice that you have like the ace and sword for like the swords. But something I actually want to note by the way, it would be nice to actually see like axes, swords, and like spears basically have like their own profile, so to speak. Maybe like with like axes to like used to like penetrate armor. So if like a target has like an armor basically on, sometimes like a critical hit from the axe will like avoid like all the like armor damage. So like you just like cut through like the armor, like deal like full damage like their like defenses. Maybe like swords basically they could be like up like a character's basic speed, so like they're more evasive and like get more hits basically. So it's just a final passive effect for the sword. Maybe for spears, they're just basically like made to like do critical damage basically on like one shot and like break. So they have like low durability, but they have like high stats to make up for it, etc., etc. I will note by the way like as well for like the bows. By the way, I think bows were like kind of annoying basically to play with because like you have a rapid fire and like other stuff we basically going for as well. So it might be nice to actually have like a sort of like a change to the bow mechanics where like it's less about their durability and more about like how often you basically can use them in combat before like you have to reload them. Like on the basis for like, the bows, by the way, it might be a good idea to actually have it like a sort of like cooldown where like you can basically fire off a bow of like a character, but in the next turn they actually can't do anything for because I have to like restring the blow. Well, not restring the bow, but they have to just like ready a new arrow, prep it like the fire. Basically, give them like a turn, basically like to get ready to like fire that bow again, so to speak. This is sort of like make the archers basically stand up from like the melee fires and stuff like that, as opposed to just being like a guy that shoots from like range. One basic thing here is like for like magic of like the spellcasters and like weapons of, like the melee users, it'd be nice if like the weapons basically did a little bit more than what they did right now. So just a little bit more like detail basically for what they basically do, as opposed to just being like the simple weapons that just go smack and make an enemy go dead. There's not a whole lot basically want to basically say like going forward, but I guess like going forward as well, it would be nice if like there was a little bit more to do like outside of the stage than like just like participating in the arena for your troops. As a suggestion, I'll note that in Age of Fear, which is basically another game I basically played, in Age of Fear basically had like randomized maps or like pre-made maps that you can actually like sort of like play on with your troops. So maybe you can have like sort of like adventures you can actually do like off like stage, so to speak, as opposed to like just having the arena where you can basically train up your troops. And the purpose for like the off adventures would be like you send your troops basically to like go like do like this like odd job, maybe it's like to patrol like this area for like goblins for example, or hunt down like a bandit. And the idea is like you can use like those odd job places to train up your troops, so you're gonna be like use for better stuff later on. I'm not really a big fan of like the arena for like leveling up your troops because obviously it's like very like gimmicky and stuff like that. But having like sort of like a randomized like odd job you can basically do would be like a nice like direction to sort of push your troops basically in to like sort of level them up, I think. But whatever. These are pretty much my thoughts basically for the game at this point. And as I basically said in like the first review video, I very much enjoyed the game and stuff like that. I do hope to see more, so hopefully I will. And until then, this will be it for Partia Free, and take care.